Joining us right now, our dear friend who's been sorely missed, Tara Dublin, who does indeed rock. Hello. How are you?
Hi. Hi. Am I coming in clear
You
from
are.
here in Portland, Oregon?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Still not a
obviously,
crater. Still
um,
not a
I,
crater. Still not
I,
on fire.
I have to say, I don't believe you.
Goodbye, Portland, you twisted
It's
mouth.
gone. Yeah.
Where's the harbor? Where's the gal?
Well, yeah. But
Hi,
yeah.
hi, sparklers. Hi, sparklers. Thank you, sparklers, who reached out and were like, "When are you coming back?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, when they have time. When they
We've
have time
we've had time,
is
but you've
when.
been busy too, young lady. No.
Really
All right.
no.
Well, we'll reconnect. All
No.
right. Well, let's
You want to
then
get
let's.
caught? Do you want to get caught up, or do you want to talk about the shitstorm? We
Well, I
can
mean,
do
I
both.
think I think the purpose of the shitstorm is to keep people from getting caught up. And I pointed out at the beginning about how the timing on this as to why now has as much to do, I would argue, with the Katie Johnson reports, the 302s, three of them being redacted of the four, and the news that was calling around, who found out about it and were checking on her account of things, and we're verifying a lot of what she said, and we're certainly calling the White House last week and going, "Hey,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to run a story about this, and we want to see if Trump was he anywhere near this place at this time? Does he have records that he was not in New York at that moment that would undercut her claim, or not in Palm Beach at that time to undercut her claim?" And of course, their answer was the same as Noam Chomsky's: "None of your business. It's all bullshit." And so that's as much a reason to start this shit as any, I would say.
Well, I would say that I have been circulating an excerpt of Katie Johnson's testimony that I recorded in July 2024 for since then. And it has never gone the viral way it should have. It still hasn't been played from the House floor. It's the same testimony everybody's talking about now.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I did it, and I recorded it as straightforwardly as I could, because from doing voiceovers that if you can try to take the emotion out of something, you can let the listener make up their own mind.
Yep.
And I tried to read it as like one of those commercials, like find out if Ozempic is right for you.
Uh-huh.
But the details are so horrific that I kept crying and I had to keep stopping and doing it again. And it's less than 2 minutes, and I've put it on all of my socials repeatedly. And it's about and it's the point of the testimony, or her complaint, or whatever you want to call it, MAGA hair splitting, semantic argumenting people. She talks about her and Maria Doe getting slapped in the face by Trump, and getting cash thrown at them. And so what happened in this excerpt,
Have an abortion.
they both were
Right.
right. Well, so in this excerpt, they were forced to perform a lesbian sex act in front of him,
Oh, yes,
and
right.
then both of them were forced to give him a blowjob. So that couldn't have taken long. But he also complained about their performances, because a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old just really haven't honed their oral skills just yet. And then he refused to wear a condom when he raped them, which is a really important detail, because if you look throughout the complaints against Trump throughout history, they all said he never wanted to wear a condom. Stormy said so. Other people have said so. So that tracks. And so they cried and worried, and they said to him, what are we going to do if we get pregnant? And he threw cash at them and said, go get a fucking abortion.
Right.
That's the excerpt. It's, it's delivered from the complaint itself. I encourage people to share it, because it is still way worse when you hear it, because people can scroll past content they don't want to read.
Mm-hmm.
MAGA doesn't read. They don't want to believe anything they're told anyway, but it is a fact. And it's just, that's what it says in it. And I know it's terrible. And we have found out even worse things since I recorded that. And it's monstrous, and it's unspeakable. And American service people are dying because Trump raped children. And when you put it as like straightforward and as insanely as that, because it's true, it makes you feel like a crazy person when you say it out loud, but it is true.
Well,
and you're asking why the timing, because they have run out of options. Epstein's never going away.
Yeah.
What's one way? Oh, well, if we kill everybody, then they can't read the Epstein files.
Yeah,
So,
it reminds me of that. You ever watch? If anybody's ever watched Blackadder, there's an episode called Bob, which is about him falling in love with his manservant, who's actually a girl in disguise, and he thinks he's turning gay because it doesn't know why he wants to sleep with his manservant. It's because she's female. And at one point, he goes to the wise woman, and he's like, he looks for a solution. She's like, number one, kill Bob. And he's like, never, I can't do it. Kill yourself. Anything else? And she's like, kill everyone in the whole world so nobody knows. And it's like, I keep thinking about that shit during this. Now, I would also like to say that there are very few situations where a person with as much freedom as the SCOTUS has given someone like Trump would feel trapped in a single issue circumstance. Because in many ways, and maybe it's because this cycle they don't feel like they can outrun it before the midterms, but it's still, he doesn't ever have to see the inside of a jail cell or any real comeuppance. He could just let everybody else burn down about it and eventually just live on a golf course in Saudi Arabia, which I think is the goal. It's the new Arizona. Is that it has to, because he could, if it was just the Epstein files, they could he could throw Pam Bondi out, and then he could bring somebody else in, like another Bill Barr, and it will be somebody like that. He's at the point where he would fire Pam Bondi and replace her with Alex Acosta. I swear to God, it's that fucking dumb. Yeah. But the idea is that how do I punt this? Because all I got to do is punt it to within 2028, one more year before that campaign starts. In his mind, I'm just saying, as a single issue.
Yeah, no, I know.
And it'll go away because he thinks he's got the power over that. Now his followers don't. And the tide has changed, and I think you're absolutely right. He can't outrun it, but he still thinks he can to some degree. But he knows he can't outrun.
He's delusional.
He can't outrun it, and rising prices, and home affordability and healthcare at the same time. And he certainly can't achieve the PNAC goals that he agreed to do because he wants the partners in the Middle East that signed onto that shit in the 90s, namely the Saudis and these other guys, who were all for PNAC. They weren't going to get knocked over. Iran was, Syria was, all their enemies were, and that's what they've been carrying out. Those guys couldn't wait any longer. This dust up, especially Jordan, shit lands on them all the time when Iran hits Israel and back and forth. So they were so he's got 3 time clocks running out at the same time, and so the biggest what it gives him is drive up oil prices. Make yourself a war hero and a war president so people won't change horses midstream. And you can blame the cost of living increases on oil for the time being and go, they'll come down because you were saying they come down by summer or by spring or by yesterday or by the month before, and they haven't. So you can start fresh with well, the oil fucked up everything. If COVID hadn't come along, everything was gonna be awesome. So we'll start with, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
I mean, in a way, yes. But then also Lindsey Graham saying he's been flying back and forth to Israel, having all of these secret meetings for the last couple of months. So I think that they have been planning some sort of fuckery. But I also think that they thought the Epstein file thing would be done by now. And I think that they were planning to do hinky shit. I mean, we've always known.
Yeah,
that Trump and Jared and Netanyahu want to flatten Gaza and turn it into the Atlantic City of the Middle East. That's no secret. So that was all part of it. I think that they also thought that by the time they got to put their plan into the next phase, we would, as a nation, as a planet, moved on from Epstein, and nothing would have held them back, right? Because they would have shown this force. But Epstein is not only not well. I mean, to his credit, he's like one of the lone slices of cheese standing alone. Democrats are acting correctly around this, and Republicans keep dropping like flies out of Congress. So sooner or later, they're going to be losing their majority, and it might happen before the midterms. I mean, if Tony Gonzalez is forced to resign, and then we also have Nancy Mace is currently under investigation for lying on her expense report. And if they yank, and by the way, she's going to lose either way. She's gone either way.
Yeah.
Because She's not going to win her South Carolina governor's race with the pedophiles endorsement. She keeps talking about the Epstein files, but she doesn't say Trump is in them, and it drives me fucking nuts. And she's going to lose her seat because she's so focused on the governor's race that she's not thinking about, she hasn't resigned her seat, but there are a bunch of people who are gunning for her seat on both sides of the aisle. So, there's every chance that they could lose their House majority before we get to the midterms. That would be beautiful, because if that happens, then they can start, doing some real shit. Now, one thing that we've talked about on the show previously is like, I have a direct line to my senator, Ron Wyden.
Yeah.
And his office. And that's only gotten better over the last couple of months. He's so great. He's, he does his town halls and he shows up for people and he answers their questions as hard as they are. And he listens to people yell at him. But one of the things that I asked him about, because I had talked to him about the tariff thing and small businesses and whatever, but I also asked him about Epstein, because as you might know, he's the ranking Democrat on Senate Finance. And and we're on the brink of war for this bullshit. And so I said to him the last time I saw him, which was last weekend, I said, do you think, because of what's happening with Epstein, all this horrific stuff, and do you think there's a point where Republicans are really going to be forced to step up and, get Trump out of there? And he said, if we are stuck in Iran long enough, yes. He said yes, because this is something, and it was like the day we woke up to the news that he had bombed Iran. So everything was brand new, and my senators still didn't have all the intel. But what he said was, and what he knows is, every Republican starts a war overseas about oil. Every single one of them. Yep. They always lose. They drive up the prices over here. Everybody gets collective amnesia about it the next time a Republican runs, and it's fucking bullshit. So what my senator said to provide some optimism, because we always try to do that, he knows a war like this is incredibly unpopular, especially when there's no real concrete reason for it. And they've changed their reasons 12 times in the last, 72 hours or whatever. But what he said was, when the gas prices really start going up, that's when Republicans are going to not be able to ignore it anymore. Because it's just fact. You want to ignore that he raped kids, that's on you. You can't ignore the rising gas prices and that oil is $100 a barrel right now. You can't. Yeah. So that's where it'll hit. Okay. It'll always hit in the money.
It's 117. And
117.
Yeah.
All right.
And the national average for price. Let's see. Price of gas has skyrocketed in the past week in response to President Trump's war in Iran. The national average for a gallon of gas hit $4.44, according to GasBuddy.com, up more than 51 cents from a week ago before the war began. Now, what you'll notice in that is that it was still $3.90, nowhere near the $1.89 he was lying about. So there's a problem Trump has had, I think, that eventually he's going to run out of track on. Which is his lie is eventually always bores him. Eventually he gets bored of whatever bullshit. I mean, we got 5,000. 5,000. It's like 7,000 now. Some people even say 10,000. I made a sketch about it on Sexy Liberal when we were doing the COVID shows, when we were doing, the digital ones. About Trumponomics, because on Sesame Street, because all you do is take any number and then you start doubling it regularly because you're bored of the old number, or it doesn't sound impressive enough to you because you're a billionaire or you're talking in $1 billion terms to other people. And so, and everything you cut at, that's why we got 1,000% cheaper drugs and that kind of stuff. Because he doesn't understand how you can raise something over 100%, but you can't lower it over 100% because you're dealing in percentages. And so it is per 100, and that's how math works. And so his inability to see that way, and it's even articulated as being cut in half, cut by a third, cut by a fifth, cut by 1/16. That sounds just as impressive, but it's too much work for his fucking brain. So $4.45 is really bad, but it's still only 50 cents higher, and that means it was almost $4 recently, and it's been going up in over time because there is no drill baby drill. There just isn't any to be had, and prices are continuing to rise. We've got 2.9% inflation, even with the weights he's been putting on it. So I think he's looking I think this is besides the Epstein smokescreen part of it. A big part of this is a great way to attempt, anyways, to basically create your own little new version of mini COVID to fuck up the world economy so much nobody blames you for your recession. The U.S. entered a recession in 2020. In January of 2020, before COVID hit, we entered a recession because of Trump's unpaid tax cuts and spending that he was doing and how it had fucked up the markets and his tariff attempts and his trade war with China. We entered we started one January 2020. Nobody noticed because the whole world's economy got fucked by COVID. He was so lucky.
That's correct.
He was so lucky.
Really, I mean, and he's such a moron because here was an opportunity for him to be, a hero and save millions of lives by telling the world what he told Bob Woodward. And Lenny saved the lives of millions of registered voters. But he didn't. He didn't because he's a moron. And then Joe Biden came along and not only lifted our economy out of a pandemic depression, but the entire global economy as well.
Yep.
But the MSM didn't report on that because they were like, he's drunk and run again. Anyway, I just want to take a quick break. Treva in the chat says, I need to turn up the saturation on my camera as a next to how your cover for being an actual vampire is blown. I'm just this pasty and I don't know how to change any saturation on a camera. So you're stuck with the whitest Jewish woman in Portland is what you're stuck with. This is as good as it's gonna get here. Sorry. Anyway, thank you though. I mean, you look fabulous. The tan and healthy and strapping. And
thank you.
Looking, whatever. There's no sun in Portland. Don't people know this?
That's right.
That's just that.
Okay. I'm raising your gamma a little bit, see if that helps, on my end, but not yet so far. It's just the nature. Yeah, there's a little bit more color in it. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. Trump said,
that means a lie is coming because any sentence that starts with Trump said.
Or something just quite frankly bullshitty. At this point, he said. He called in, I think he either said it to kill Dillweed on Fox and Friends, or he read it from something else. And he goes, here's exactly what Trump said. These ships should go through the Strait of Hormuz and show some guts. There's nothing to be afraid of. They have no navy. We sunk all their ships. Okay.
Is he playing Battleship and Risk at home or something?
Couple of things. The way the closing of the Strait of Hormuz would work tactically for everybody who it might be new to this part of it, because you've heard the threat for a long time, but how it happens is the question. The way they would do it is by mining the seafloor and then having magnetic mines that float below the surface, above the bottom of the floor, but as a ship goes by, they would attach and then explode. And this is fairly standard. They don't need a giant battleship or even a Coast Guard size ship to do it. You can do it you can drop these things with fucking speedboats. They have a civilian watercraft looking group. They can even mask one of their oil tankers to go through and drop them out of the bottom on their way out. And then that boat just never comes back through because it would get blown up as well. And the threat of these things is not because somebody's going to fire, there's a boat in the area that's going to fire on these oil tankers as they go through. It's because they're going to mine it, and then they have missiles that come from far away. So they could shoot from land, because it's not very big, it's 30 kilometers wide. They could shoot from land and hit boats going through there, or scare them off, or wound members of the crew. They could hit them with multiple drones. Again, the Shahed drones are enough. They've hit airports in Dubai. They sure as fuck can hit a boat less than 30 kilometers off their coast. So it has nothing to do with the fucking Navy. And it never did. And it never will.
You don't really expect Cadet Bone Spurs to understand the intricacies of war, do you? He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He just wants shit blown up. He doesn't want to understand. He doesn't read his daily briefings. He has no fucking clue. He doesn't understand anything about anything. All he knows is things blow up. He doesn't care who dies. He wouldn't even take off his fucking hat at the dignified transfer There's nothing dignified about him, okay?
Mhm.
You might as well have slapped a giant bumper sticker on his ass saying, "I'd rather be golfing," because he has no interest in the minutia of policy or why people are mad at each other or why we're at war or why that region is, historically troubled. None whatsoever. He's a bottom line me dude. How much is this putting in my pocket? How much is this putting in my bank account? I don't care who lives. I don't care who dies. I don't know what prices are because I don't have to pay for shit. I
Mhm.
don't go grocery shopping. I don't drive a car. I don't have to pay for gas. He is so, inured of anything that resembles reality. He is sheltered and always has been from the daily lives of regular people. So his lack of interest in it has always been an issue, like from the outset, because when you don't understand the basics of how your government works and no interest in civics or policy or whatever, like it's astonishing that anybody who has this little knowledge
Mhm.
of how the government works, how the military is supposed to operate, how your foreign policy matters on the global, like no interest whatsoever. And you go back to something that I shared the other day, is that video from going back to what all of the Republicans were saying about him in 2016 before the Russians hacked the DNC and
Mhm.
RNC servers, and then what they started saying afterwards. And it's infuriating, especially in the context of what we're living in right now, because every single one of them became compromised one way or the other just a little bit after they made these public statements. Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, everybody who's up his ass now, they knew. And everybody's forgotten because of the slow boil in the media. You and I haven't forgotten, and your
Yeah.
audience hasn't forgotten. But the people who are now in charge of the media don't want you to remember that stuff. That's why they're in charge of the media. And that's
Right.
what you and I talked about extensively before the election, was the danger in letting them control the narrative, because every single day they can change the narrative. Why we're in Iran, where's Netanyahu, what's happening in Gaza. I don't believe anything he says. I don't believe anything coming from this White House, and nobody should.
Uh,
And that's a horrific thing to say as an American citizen, especially one who's, scraping out a livelihood telling the truth about the news, is that w- this
right.
this misinformation, disinformation campaign that has been so egregiously successful, everything he does comes with a body count. And the last thing I'll say about this before throwing it back to you, everyone needs to remember that Donald Trump has never been and never will be a take one for the team guy. He
Right.
always has been and always will be. The team has to take one for me. We're the team
Agreed.
that has
And
to take it for him. And that's not how we should live as a nation,
it
ever.
it, it struck me as a particularly ironic, in a very dark and dismal kind of a way, that everything they say about Donald Trump was true of Charlie Kirk. In that, if you listen to how they talk, and these are people on their own side, which is the ironic part. If it was about somebody else, they wouldn't
Mhm.
give a fuck at all, right?
Right.
But Trump, like they literally shot him in the face, right? They keep saying he
No,
clipped
they
his ear with
didn't.
a piece of glass from his teleprompter and killed one of his followers, which none of them can name anymore. They've been memory hold. The injured ones,
I
like,
can.
shrug, right? But Charlie Kirk has been one of the. There's been a bunch of wedge issues since July of last year that have increasingly created, a distance between him and MAGA. One that will, in some ways, each of which could only be healed by some sort of jingoistic lineup behind the boss moment. Each one of them on their own, Epstein files, affordability and his plan for tariffs, all whatever it is. The answer has been trust in Trump. He knows the path, and he may not follow you into the promised land. He's not going to get into heaven, but he's going to lead you to the gates, and you can walk on through. And each one of these is sort of true of that sales pitch. A cumulative, on an accumulative level, it's very difficult to carry all three of those as a trust me bro, using the trust me bro defense. And
Mhm.
the Charlie Kirk thing, I'm sure you've seen some of the Candace Owens shit and like this crazy like 5-part series she's doing about who is the real Erica Kirk and that she was engaged in child trafficking and that she was part of fucking MK Ultra's plan to control the conservative movement and all this stuff. And I gotta say, I don't really give a shit what cherry-picked truths she is using to turn into this fruit salad of nonsense, in the same way that I don't give a shit about the ones that Tucker Carlson uses against the U.S. and Israel to defend Russia because the goal is there, whatever. Because you can, in an open society, you will always have plenty of ammunition against your own side. It's my argument for why no society with an oral tradition is ever the bad guy, because it's real easy to get rid of your... But the minute you start writing down history, even if you're the victor who writes the story, eventually you're going to start writing down your fuck-ups too, because you want to learn from them, or you got to be criticized, or that's the law, and it'll catch up with you. There's always plenty of shit to say. But you have to look at the motivation of why somebody goes, why is that detail and this detail, and you put this detail, and Alex Jones is the poster child for this shit. But Charlie Kirk's death has been turned into a religious cause amongst maggots, by and large. And this keeps showing up on X as one of the things.
Interesting.
Charlie Kirk post. No nukes for Iran, no troops on the ground, no U.S. troops dead, no regime change, no nation building, no war. President Trump with a historic master class.
And then look at the one right underneath it from Beanie Baby. From the Beanie Baby.
When Trump ran for office, he explicitly campaigned on waging war in Iran to save the Iranian people and spread democracy. That is an ironic tweet, I suppose, from the launch of the war. Point being, though, is that there's been a shit ton of Charlie Kirk, would be spinning in his grave right now if it wasn't for this.
Oh, please. Stop it.
No. I get it. We don't have to care about what Charlie Kirk would say about any particular issue, but understand that maggots sure as fuck do. And this has been a bellwether, and this stacks on top of all the reasons they think that Israel or the U.S. or the fucking army or whoever, Erica and everybody else, killed Charlie Kirk last year, according to the Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes wing of the maggot parade. They're convinced that part of this is because Trump and the neocons and the Lindsey Grahams are planning this war. They know it's going to happen, and that last year's one-off bombing was not a one-off bombing. And even if they stop short, I would argue now, do 3 weeks and say, we've done it, we'll be back in there in June again, because they've realized you can't just maybe go and stay, but you could hit them all the time. It could just be a fucking, you're like weeding a garden. Just fucking fly over and drop more pesticide. That's literally how they could view this. And Trump, like the maggots will fucking clap like harbor seals.
Right. And then how soon after that did he die? Because also one of the last interviews Charlie Kirk gave. Okay, so one of his final interviews was with Megyn Kelly. And they talked about the Epstein files. And Charlie Kirk said he wanted the full unredacted Epstein files released.
Yep.
He wanted everybody exposed. And he said he didn't care if Trump was in there. He wanted all of it out. And she agreed. And it's out there and you can find it and it's real. Yep. And then like days later, he was shot. And that, I don't want to go down the conspiracy rabbit hole. I find that timing hinky. To give a call back to what you were talking about, sketchy, because we don't have all of the information. Again, just like in Butler, no medical report released, no autopsy report released. Where's he buried? Nobody knows. So there's and remember, at the very base, Charlie Kirk was a podcaster who dropped out of junior college. That's who he was. Okay, and he got elevated to the point where flags were flown at half-mast, and his fucking face is on the Department of Education right now. Yeah. Did you know that? His fucking face. Charlie fucking Kirk, who hates Jews and said terrible things about black people and people of color and the LGBTQ community. His face is hanging between two people of color who are known for education. Makes me want to scream, and it's on purpose. It's their way of fucking with us, and it makes me very angry. But I'm using my mommy says it's time to leave the store voice, because otherwise I'll just start screaming and not stop. So the Charlie Kirk that's an easy trigger, right? That's
Yeah.
an easy trigger distraction as well. But when they do that, circle it back to Epstein because the timing is weird. He
Yep.
says Epstein files should come out. Oh no, he's dead. Then there's Erica Kirk with her hand in JD Vance's hair at the next Turning Point event.
Yeah.
What was that? What was that? And who's really the father of Usha's fourth baby? I don't know. I'm just asking questions. I'm asking questions as to why Usha and Caroline got pregnant at the same time. Just timing. Timing of things just make you go, remember that song, Things That Make You Go,
Yes.
Just as one of those. You could have a segment like that because literally everything that they do makes you go, wait a minute. Like when
Are you saying that Peter Thiel might be paying them to surrogate and cover it as some sort of new royals that they want to build as part of the technocratic control of a new territorial America that they all see in their weird tech bro future? This is, by the way, this is the
bro. That's what that motherfucker was doing while people were getting blown up in Iran.
Yeah, and he's still wearing the same hat he wore at the dignified transfer. He didn't bother.
By the way, that was a commercial for his hat. By the way, that's a brand new hat. I read about it. It's brand new, available in his online merch store for $55. You could buy that hat that he refused to take off of his head at the dignified transfer because he doesn't want whatever's left of the cotton candy on his head to blow away.
A douche. Like
you you go for it. Let him keep grifting you, suckers. Just let him. That bunker's not going to pay for itself that they're building under where the East Wing used to be. It's fine.
I will say there is one there is one good piece of news, one good thing that Trump might be doing that
I'm sorry.
Easy I give credit where credit is due. If he's going to do something positive, I want to be able to do that, right? I want to be magnanimous in that level. Trump has said, let's see if I can find it. Trump has said that he is not going to sign any bills that come out of the Senate. Wait, hold on. That he's not going to sign any bills that come out of the Senate unless they pass the Save America Act. And I would like to say for the record, fine. I mean, they control the House and the Senate. The only things that are going to get it passed are things that Republicans want. So who are you exactly threatening with fuckery? Well, I would argue other Republicans. That this is really a threat to, like, the Senate Republicans by and large, who have real power, who will be around after he's gone. And he knows it, and are holding up. They don't want to get rid of the filibuster for the same reason Democrats don't, because it'll always come back to bite you in the ass when all it takes is a simple majority. If you think what Trump is doing is knocking over norms and bullying through shit like that, the Republicans are aware that if a Democrat had that same inclination in power and the wind at their back, they would absolutely be able to get a shit ton of stuff done that would be impossible for them to undo. And I think Democrats are afraid that Republicans, and rightly so, would be able to do damage that could not be undone in this process.
Right. Well,
so,
I mean, the unfortunate thing is, like, every time a Republican shows any sort of spine, then they turn around and do something fucking weak as hell. And then you're like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, everyone was praising Tom Tillis when he was reading Kristi Noem to filth. And great. Yeah, it's awesome to see Republicans yelling at her.
Yep.
I felt like some of it was misplaced anger. Like they're mad at Trump, but they can't yell at Trump, so they're yelling at her because he's going to see it. And Tom Tillis has one foot out the Senate chamber door. He's retiring. He's not running for re-election. So how brave is it for him to stand up and do that when he knows that he's not going to have any repercussions from it? He's got his pension. He's not going to get, arrested. He's not, nothing's going to happen to Tom Tillis. So he can be out there being like, hey, let's talk about this flying fuck shop, shall we? And she's like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. My husband's right here. I didn't do anything. I can't move my face, but I swear I'm upset. It's just like, again, I want to believe that enough of the remaining Senate Republicans who are not up for re-election, who are still going to be there, past January are not happy about the Iran conflict, whatever war, whatever you want to call it, makes them look bad. I mean, everything about Trump makes them look bad because everything Trump does comes with a body count one way or the other. And at some point, I really hope that we have our version of the Nuremberg trials, because there's a lot of people who should be in a lot of trouble for what they're doing right now, what they're supporting right now, and what's happening right now.
Yeah,
I
but
want to believe
again,
enough of them would stand with Democrats to finally impeach and remove Trump. I would love to believe that because of what's happening in Iran and the gas prices and those things.
Yeah, well, it isn't at that boiling point yet, and there is a window of gas prices and costs and the futures that are and so much volatility because nobody knows what the fuck Trump is going to do and how long this is going to last and if he's going to do it again and all this kind of shit that I feel like they're afraid to step out, from under the umbrella because they're not sure if it's still raining or not. And that's part of why he does what he does and how he does it is that he will, he'll jumpstart stuff and then blow it off. And then it's almost like, Don't Ask, Don't Tell is a great example of why you can't do it and then undo it. Because once people have admitted that they're gay or lesbian and they are in the armed forces, if you reverse the policy, the people who were outed themselves because legally they could, can no longer un-out themselves and go back to work and not talk about it anymore because they already talked about it. They're living openly. And so the right. Republicans' goals in shutting that down was use Don't Ask, Don't Tell as bait to have everybody serve openly and then make it illegal for you to serve if you're gay or lesbian go back to pre-Don't Ask, Don't Tell. That's been the plan for the entire time. There was a similar issue, I think, with Republicans, and they look at that as a measure of when it's safe to come out against a policy or something like that. Is this really a turnaround? Is this really the tipping point? Are we really there yet? And that's why there's so much tepid, like, do we dare amongst them? Because if they step out too early and Trump goes, never mind, I'm not going to do the tariffs. And it doesn't affect the economy because people might have heard the big story about him turning a tariff on, but didn't hear the story about him not implementing them, which was all last summer. Anybody who came out and said the tariffs are going to fuck up the economy, a lot of average voters thought for a good period of time, we'll see how long that sticks, that the tariffs are on and it didn't really affect the economy that much. It didn't crash things. Prices didn't go up 300% like they said they were going to. That's because they were never implemented. But if you didn't hear they were never implemented and only heard from Trump, tariffs are going to happen. They're happening right now. They're awesome. We're doing them. We're doubling them. We're tripling them. And you're not really feeling them yet. Not on that level anyways. You're feeling them a little, but not to the extent that the people who warned you. Well, the reason you're not feeling them to the extent you were warned was because they didn't happen to the extent you were warned. But if you didn't hear that part, you think Trump did this giant thing. Everybody was saying it's going to be terrible, and it wasn't. And they take advantage of that all the time. It's not quite the low information voter. It's that make as big a splash on the top end of this story, and then any of the mistakes buried. Look at the big bullshit bill last year. They had to walk back like 10 parts of it, including VA cuts that were in there once they got caught. But those, we just signed those and passed them. They were no fanfare.
Right, but he still stole $1,700 from every single American taxpayer based on his tariffs because they were arbitrary, is what we learned not that long ago. $1,700 is a lot of money. It's a lot of money for me. It's a lot of money for most people. It should be something that MAGA cares about a lot. $1,700 is a lot of money. That's money he stole from your family. That's money you could have paid for. Remember last Christmas where he was like, maybe you only get 3 pencils and 2 dolls.
Right.
Maybe it's just 1 doll. That's because he fucking stole $1,700 from you.
Yes.
And he knew that he did. That's why they were all like, hey, don't have a full Thanksgiving dinner this year. Just cut back on the sides. That's not what you want to hear. That's not what a thriving government tells you. A thriving government says, go for it. Like, shop till you drop. Stuff your fucking fat faces. We're living high on the hog. Let's go. We're thriving. That's not what's happening. Nobody who's happy about the economy says spend less, buy fewer things. They know what they're doing. It's his old con. He has always been a walking game of 3-card Monte. Always. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? You will
And show
never
some
find where he's hiding the thing because
Right.
he's always shuffling. If he's not talking about this, he's talking about this. If he's not talking about that, then it's over here. Oh, we're on Iran.
Well,
What Epstein files?
that's
You
another.
know, it's
yeah.
always that.
Another good point in that this morning, I think JD Vance was doing something with the American Federation of Firefighters, the AFF, like just talking to them today. And Trump was doing that thing about college sports that day before yesterday, where he was like, when someone asked him about the Iran war, he was like, we're talking about something very important here. College, there's a lot of money happening around these things, and this is a very important issue. Almost like are you still talking about the Epstein files energy to try and bat away talk about, are you still talking about Iran, the Iran war? That's that creep, that mission creep. Right? That he is trying, they're also, one of the ways they're flooding the zone with bullshit is by acting like the Iran war is a side pocket. Most administrations, when something this extraordinary was happening, would effectively powwow and batten down the hatches, and all other priorities go in the bin for right now because it's going to take all of our thinking caps. Now, granted, most of the administration doesn't want Trump anywhere near any of the real decisions, the tactical and strategic decisions in this situation. It's bad enough he started it, much less that he starts micromanaging the fuck out of this because he has no idea how anything works. So they probably would rather have him, and I think us as Americans would probably rather have him golfing and ignoring it and going, putting around, behaving basically like a vice president. Remember in Dave when Ben
I
Kingsley.
love that movie.
Ben Kingsley's the vice president, and he comes in with this like gifts from Africa, and he's like presented from the king of Burundi or whatever, and because he's got these shit jobs just going around, and Dave finally asks him for real advice and starts to listen to him because he's a decent guy and was brought on because he'd be different, whatever. Trump is doing those jobs. Trump is doing the greetings from the president of Burundi bullshit, while
Right.
and fucking, I would argue, Besant is telling, and maybe Nutlick are telling Hegseth what to do. I would argue,
And don't forget about Stephen Miller. And Stephen Miller.
well,
is
Stephen
just,
Miller, I think, is more, arguably, in charge of fucking up domestic policy and pushing for. He's almost entirely on the deportation beat, which is a failure. So with Noam gone, but I think the big he doesn't have anything to give in terms of information or tactical stuff. Nobody's going to look to his advice. Like Besant and those guys who are in oil and currency manipulation markets for a living, this is their fucking game. And they're like, imagine if you're Besant and you've been over the years.
I don't
back when you used to work for Soros or whatever, and you look at how currencies are tipping one direction or another. They just naturally do it because this happens or that happens. And then imagine if you could, imagine you're sitting there like, dude, if I could make that blow up, if I could blow that up, my holdings would go to here. That's the position they are in right now.
You know what infuriates me about Scott Bessent is that man is gay. He's married to a man. He has 2 sons, and he does not do anything to advocate for LGBTQ rights. He doesn't care that this administration doesn't want him to have rights. And so every time I catch a Scott Bessent tweet, I always respond with 2 screenshots. One is a story about Donald Trump saying that Pete Buttigieg's marriage to a man isn't real. And then the other one is my Senator Ron Wyden did a brief thread about the financial ties between American banks and Russian banks in the Epstein files. Most Americans still don't know that the U.S. Treasury Department has its own set of Epstein files. And they are supposed to be sharing that information with both Senate Finance and House Oversight. And Scott Bessent is not complying. He is not allowing Ron Wyden or James Comer to have full access to these Epstein files that the Treasury Department has that are incredibly damning. There are over 4,700 wire transfers that that Senate Finance discovered. And the Trump administration declined to investigate. Weird. So that's an important part of, like, Scott Bessent has been given way more power than a Treasury secretary should have. Way more influence. Like, he's supposed to be quietly hanging out, doing the Hamilton thing, making sure that the money is cool and it's circulating right and all of that is, all literally the checks and balances. And instead, he's running his mouth over a lot of things that the Treasury Secretary is pretty much never quoted about, asked about, doesn't have anything to do with, and at the same time, actively involved in the Epstein files cover up. And these are things that the most Americans don't know because Barry Weiss isn't going to tell them. So that's like those are those stories that I wish would get out while all of this is going on, because there's multiple things to the Epstein files besides the salacious and unspeakable details. The financial, I think he's going to end up getting hit the same way as Capone, where it's going to be the financials that take him down and not like the horrific stuff. But either way, Scott Bessent is a criminal and he's a traitor to the United States. And anytime he's quoted as all I think is Trump doesn't think your marriage to a man. Israel, what do you tell your sons? What are you going to tell your sons about this? Like, that's what I think about.
Right. Okay. And you know why you do? Because you're adorably young. You're such a youngin'. You're such a.
I'm 57 next month. I'm not young.
You're
57.
You're,
it's my Heinz year. It's my saucy Heinz year where we got to make magic happen. But we'll do that in a minute.
Okay. You are young, and you are a product of your generation, young lady. And in that, and you're a product of your generation because you grew up in a period that contained what I would call the bias of or the bigotry of shared goals. And that happened during the civil rights era. It happened during suffrage. It certainly happened during Revolutionary War times, and it happens anytime strange bedfellows occur, where straight people and gay people got together to give gay people rights, or men and women got together to give women's rights and that kind of stuff. And then over time, you recognize that the goals of some of them might be divergent because they are complete human beings. And the period by which you were fighting the same enemy gives you the illusion that there is alignment or monolithic behavior in that particular group you were siding with from the outside. So as straight people, it seems very strange that any gay person would side with someone who is against their rights and thinks that they're mentally ill and all that kind of stuff. But that's because we think their value is primary in terms of their identity, and they think their value is, their identity is secondary to their primary value, which is money or power or getting their fears answered by having whoever they think of as their enemy killed on their behalf. So siding together in those situations, the assumption is, and it is its own form of bigotry, that all gay people are cut from the same cloth and the one thing we can agree on is freedom. And it ain't. It just ain't. And when it comes to Bessent, guarantee that fucker would trade his rights to adopt and be married out in the open because he's rich enough it wouldn't fucking matter. He could have a house and a contract drawn up between him and his partner that was sound, that gave each other power of attorney. The next best thing to being a marriage certificate. And if you wanted to adopt children, they could do it as individuals and then share the household and whatever, right? And then give each other, insurance policy over and form a fucking corporation with $500 million in the bank that is technically a trust for this group of people, which is really a corporation, but it might as well be a family. And remember, Mitt Romney said, corporations are people, my friend. This is partly what he was talking about. That you can incorporate and get around a lot of this shit if you don't have religious beliefs. And that was the real fight on the right, is that they just remember it wasn't, marriage is a religious term. Civil unions, I'm fine. That's how we ended up getting there. Bessent thinks he's a part of a different class. He thinks he's a part of a different class of human beings. And that is not unique to straight white dudes or African kings and military leaders or Middle Eastern sheiks or fucking Eastern European, women provincial governors and mayors
Yeah.
who are just as power hungry and oligarchical, as the next. And the problem is that if you have a perceived enemy and you have a perceived ally, you can, and the threat is high enough, you can blaze right past your own, real loyalties and your own real awareness of, of checking who you're next to, who you're sharing intel with, and the like, And this has always been a problem, and it's never going to stop as long as humans are humans. So the issue here is that I'm not surprised that the Bessents of the world are like this. There are some who fetishize their identity as a gay person so much that they think marriage is a straight person thing, and it makes them lose their erection. I've heard them say it, and it doesn't mean they're indicative of all of them, but it certainly it fits the Peter Thiel crowd and the Bessent crowd more than it fits the person who works with you at work, or that you see at the coffee shop, or that you interact with on a blue collar or white collar level, and in the rest of the 90% of the country. Those folks, that identity matters to them the same way that your identity, as a woman or as a straight person or whatever, matters to you only when it is checked. The rest of the time you're you, and this is just a facet of who you are. Your identity only matters when someone tries to check it. And in Bessent's world, and this is really like the thing, nobody checks it. Nobody fucking cares. At their level, that's why these Epstein pedophile crowd are allowed to get away with it, because nobody is checking it at the door. Nobody's saying, I'm morally offended by that. Nobody. Because it's about the accumulation of mass wealth and this sort of like bunker, like they're fucking preppers. At a certain point, as long as you can hold a gun and point it out the holes and you can keep the zombies at bay, they don't give a fuck what you do on your bunk. And that's it. No. And that's, that between how much money and power can we accumulate and how much fear do we have of the masses, that crowd doesn't give a shit about their identity as gay or straight or, pedophile or Christian Zionist or whatever. It doesn't matter. They're all awash. They're all the same fuckers.
Yeah. I'm now writing twice a week for Raw Story.
Awesome.
Doing opinion pieces, and my most recent one is basically an open letter to the Republican Party. And again, as an atheist, it's a weird phrase to use, but it is time for them to come to Jesus. Mm-hmm. It really is. This is the moment. And you've been getting away with enabling all of this horrific behavior, these unspeakable Epstein files. People are dying now. Like, now is the time where you need to face your constituents, like, publicly, and declare you're either loyal to Trump or America. And if you choose the first one, you lose your seat immediately, because we are witnessing treasonous acts every single day. And that's another thing that we need to be checking them on, because aside from everything that you said, which I totally agree with, it's our responsibility to call out this behavior that's endangering our livelihood. And that includes the people who voted for this administration, as well as the ones who didn't. I don't know how many times I have said on the show, and I might say it every single time I've been on this show, but well before this, nobody should be dying for Donald Trump. Not one person.
Right.
Not one person, for any reason whatsoever. And that I want, me, the scrappy Gen X latchkey kid who learned how to take care of myself from like the age of 11 or whatever. Like, I wish you had the same survival instinct over there on the MAGA side, and you were able to look at this pragmatically and go, raised gas prices hurt my family. Raised food prices hurt my family. Losing my health care hurts my family. I don't care if you don't like the truth, but it's really important. Like, right now, you have to accept it. And so my whole thing was, here are the truths. I don't like them. These are the truths, though, and we have to accept them. And when Republicans finally do, that is the only way that we get our democracy back on track. So everything that the Republicans are doing is everything Trump is doing. Everything Trump is doing is what the Republicans do. They are one and the same. And that is how you win the midterms, by the way. Aside from having a strong candidate who can go out there and actually win. And as you say, the focus is always flipping red districts to purple, purple districts to blue. Keeping blue districts blue, you don't get points for that, but you do get points for moving the needle. And so part of that conversation needs to be sticking everything Trump does to the Republicans like you took his loaded diaper off of him and put it on them. He is their fault. He is their responsibility. They're not owning the libs. They own him. He owns them. All of them together are at fault. They're trying to blame the Democrats for what's happening in Iran. They're trying to blame the Democrats for what happened to Alex Preddy and Renee Good. They're trying to blame Democrats for needing ICE agents. Like, shut the fuck up.
Well, also, okay.
Hold them accountable in the right way. Like, we have to check them. And if we keep checking them, other people will pick up on that. Hopefully.
Agreed. Okay. I believe that any Republican that has any hope of recognizing that they've been flim-flammed or turning their things around, or that their alleged values have been turned on their head and used against them or whatever, will have the mental awareness to either do something about that at some point, or completely shut down and just stop voting, which is what a bunch of them are doing. There's a huge chunk of them that are, talking themselves out of voting this time. And that helps us immensely. I'd rather everybody vote, but you vote with your feet as well. So these fuckers, if we're going to have, if they have their own TYT effect, then fuck them. But when it comes to a big chunk of Trump's maggot base, and the ones that we're always contemplating, will they ever shake it? Will they ever come out from under him? Will they ever wake up to this? Part of the reason why they're so slow to do it is because they are operating on a different set of facts, or more specifically, that there is a never-ending flood of facts, and you can choose the facts aren't chosen by your search for the truth. It's by your own internal priorities, your primary fears and insecurities, and your primary desires and drivers. And those two things will make you seek out news. What's the worst thing that could happen? What's the best thing that can happen? If there's a fork in the road, let me try the best and avoid the worst. And to us, there's maybe 8 ways to go. And most of them will be relatively good, but have their own backslide, and you can never really know. To them, they increasingly, even when there are 8, they would rather there be 2. And so their decision-making matrix in their head is based on avoiding the gray areas and trying to make everything as binary as possible. And I think we also have to avoid that as best we can, because that's what true diversity is about, and it's it's why being a Democrat's harder. But in the case of a big bunch of these maggots they're going to prioritize based on fear whatever Trump has fed them along the way, to the extent they can stomach it. And it worked with immigration, but only for a while. And what they realized was, and this is, I think more than anything, is that, and I've heard this lie repeated over and over still, and it just bounces off them, which is fascinating now. 25 million, 35 million immigrants have flooded the country. Where, that Biden let all these crazy people in and whatever. And yet, deportations are down. And even when they're rounding people up, they're finding 8, 10 people nationwide that fit the bill. But the rest of the people are farm workers and roofers and hospitality workers and sous chefs and cooks and cleaners and shit like that. And their own people. And then he's like, well, we need some farm shit, so let the farmers just have an honor system. Fuck it. Just let we'll just let them pick their own. Now, if Hillary Clinton had said something like that, like every Republican's head would have exploded all at once. It would have sounded like popcorn popping in an adjacent room as you listen to the skulls exploding all over the country. But because Trump said it, they shrugged it off and forgot about it, because it helped them bury the lie that there aren't 25 to 35 million fucking lunatics running around. And the economy is kept largely in check through cheap, under-the-table labor. And until we have a real remedy for that, that's how it's going to be. So best to look the other way. And maggots are starting to wake up to that. And what happens is, he started talking about people from the Congo, because Mexicans aren't that fucking scary to these people anymore. They used to be scary. During Reagan, they were scary as shit. during the 50s,
Sure.
maybe, scary as shit. Now, I don't know. It's marque numero dos. I've gotten over it. Like, you hear it on the phone, you don't
Yeah.
care anymore. But
Yeah.
back then, it sounded like a fucking invasion in the 90s. Now we're kind of, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not, it's just a portion of the populace, like the French-speaking portion of Canadian populace. You don't care.
Mhm.
But, so he's got to ratchet it up. And again, it goes to that Trump math thing. This isn't scary enough. This isn't big enough. It isn't extreme
Right,
enough. It
exactly.
doesn't sound sexy. We need
Exactly.
the sequel's
Yeah.
got to be bigger than the original, more explosions, higher body count, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And
Right.
that's the concern about the Iran war for a lot of maggots, is that regime wars, you know, if you don't stop them, you in Trump world, you only have one option. It's not, you're either going to stop them, never do them again, or do them like nobody's ever done it before. America, fuck yeah, boom.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And they know this about him. So part of their panic about him is that they know there will be no middle way.
Yeah.
And it's
Fuck
on
'em.
them.
Fuck
Yeah,
them.
right.
I hate
Right.
them so much.
So I don't think we have to worry
Let's
about
end with something good, though.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
need to end with something good. All right.
So this
Few
doesn't
good things.
this doesn't qualify the rivers of oil that
No.
are flowing down Tehran's
No.
streets. That doesn't
No,
qualify.
although that's a visual for what the inside of everybody's brain feels like. That's how we
It's
all
what my
feel
neurons
right
look like when
now.
they fire.
Exactly. So we one thing that we know is MAGA hates it when nice things happen. Period.
Mhm.
They really hate it when nice things happen to Democrats.
Right.
So there's two things that I would like the sparklers to help with this week and going forward. Aside, like your support, whether you're paying for my Substack or not, sharing what we write, sharing our truth, sharing my raw story, sharing my Substack, sharing the link to my book, whatever. That's great. I'm trying to do something actual, real in Portland right now. I'm wearing my Low Bar Corral shirt. You know, I've talked about my Low Bar Corral multiple times on this show. In less than a month, Bruce Springsteen is kicking off his next tour, and he's starting in Minneapolis, and then the second night is here in Portland. That seems intentional. Like the scheduling of that seems like from going from Minneapolis to Portland seems very intentional. One of the things that Low Bar is doing is we're participating in the national movement that's grown from Minnesota, the protest singing movement. And we do something called Voices of Resistance now, little side project. And we sang Streets of Minneapolis for the first time we got together.
Mhm.
We have a nice video of it. We would like to sing that song with the Portland Frogs and us and Bruce Springsteen at the Moda Center on April the 3rd. I grew up in New Jersey. You know this?
Mm-hmm.
I have this. In the town next to Springsteen's, I have never seen Bruce Springsteen play live. My mother has. That's not okay with me. She's not allowed to be cooler than me in any way. So it's my
Right.
pinned. Well, I don't know what socials everybody does. This is not about what socials or lectures or whatever. I've shared it on all my socials. So Instagram and Blue Sky and Twitter, I've pinned the video. Just hit it. Just hit it up. Just share it, please. I want to try it. I have contacted CAA, which is Springsteen's management. I haven't heard back. I did drop the name of my hometown. I did lean into the Jersey thing. The venue in Portland is literally, I could walk to it. But never having seen Springsteen, we have a choral group that sings his songs. We know what it's like to live here in Portland under all of the shit that he sings about in Streets of Minneapolis. Let's just make this happen. It would be a good thing.
Yeah.
Just want to make a good thing happen. Costs you nothing but about 5 seconds of your time to share my post about Springsteen. If you want to go further and quote it and tag Springsteen, lovely. Thank you so much.
Right.
That is my ask. That is my ask. We want to bring joy and song and music and healing to the world at a time where everybody needs it. And I don't care who you voted for. Music is one of the greatest common denominators that connects us as human beings. It heals, it soothes, it sparks beautiful feelings, and it's amazing. And it's a wonderful lifeline. So again, Jersey girl wants to get in to see Springsteen. Can't afford the tickets for sure, but organically, we should all be able to, we want to sing with him.
Nice.
Is what it comes down to. So yeah, that's the mission, along with, continuing to tell the truth. Those are my missions.
It's a good one.
I think those are,
I-
you know what? I've been surviving on sarcasm and caffeine. And so, but this brings me some purpose and yeah, so it's good to be back. and I'm monumentally available to swing by whenever you got time.
I love that idea. All right. Well, we'll do it again very soon. Take care of yourself, and we will see you very
Love
soon.
you guys.
All right.
Stay safe. Rock out, Bruce.
Indeed. All right. There she goes. Hold on.
Goodbye, Portland. You twisted man.
I left before I could play her out. Everybody just
Where's the
no etiquette.
Goodbye, Portland.
Is that a Portland thing?
You make no sense.
You know?
Renaissance mayors on a latte fence.
Yeah, I don't. I have some connections in the music world that might be loosely tied to the world of Springsteen, usually through the country bluegrass, heavy player session people. But I don't know that I can impact this directly, but I won't rule it out.